Hello F11 members and welcome to the Fundamentals of Post-Production video tutorials for issue 47, December 2015. In part 1, I'd like to take you through the processing of this image on the screen in front of me here. It's shot on our Exmoor Workshop just a few weeks ago. Beautiful early morning light, great autumn colours, a little bit of mist lying in the valley below, the village of Selworthy on the hillside beyond. A great situation. I used a polarizer when shooting this picture to really make those autumnal colours jump out of the frame. Of course, with the angle of the light, side lighting the scene, the polarizer had maximum effect. But if I go into Develop module now here in Lightroom and show you this finished image next to where I started from, and there you can see on the left that's the raw unprocessed straight out of the camera, and it's looking pretty dull and lifeless compared to what I've ended up with here. And so we're going to talk our way through how I got to that particular stage. Just before we start, I'm just going to mention that we're recording these Fundamentals of Post-Production video tutorials in full 1080 high definition resolution video now, so you may want to adjust your video browser to make the most of that resolution. Hopefully it will help you see what I'm doing. Okay, let's just clear up the window a bit. I don't need the icons along the bottom of the frame anymore, so I'm just going to hit this little arrow here, which is at the bottom of the frame there, which hides them for the moment, and the same up top, just makes for a cleaner work environment. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go back to where we started, and I'm going to click on Reset and talk you through what I did. So as usual, my first port of call was looking at the histogram to assess the black and white points. Are the darkest tones in the picture a true black, and the same with the whites. And if I hold down my Shift key on the keyboard here and move my white cursor to the right, I do that until I start to see whites clipping. And whoa, going way too far there. And in fact, what I'm doing, because I've recently switched over from PC to Mac, is holding down the Shift button where I should be holding down the Alt button. So I'm still making this adjustment, but now if I hold down the Alt and move the white slider to the right, you can see that clipping starting to occur. As soon as I go, I can't really go very far, maybe plus 11 on the whites before I start clipping my highlights. Do the same again, but with the black slider here, hold down the Alt, move the black slider to the left, and I'll see when I start to clip my shadows, and I can go to about -34 there. Okay, so that's adjusted my black and white points, and you will, having watched several of these post-production video tutorials, know that that is normally what I do to start. Now, what we've got is mist, and we photographers love mist, don't we? But it's just a bit too much in the distance. It's just a bit too much like fog. And I'm actually going to use the dehaze tool here in Lightroom to just punch through that fog a bit. And if I just demonstrate to you now, if I just move that slider to the right, what it does, it's pretty incredible. You can virtually take out all the fog. But the trouble is, of course, that I don't want to do that. I love the mist. So I just want to fine-tune it. And the other thing is, as you see, I move the dehazer slider to the right. It's affecting all of the picture. Sure, it's building up the contrast in the distance where the fog lies, but also in the foreground. And that is not something I want to happen. So I'm going to use later the grad tool to selectively dehaze apart the top half of the image. So, but before we do that, let's just consider the bottom third or half of the image, the forest down here. It's a little bit bright at the moment, so I'm going to use the tone curve here and just drag that down a touch to darken that just a bit. Some of the shadows are starting to look a little bit dense there, so I'm going to just relieve or recover some of those shadows here using the shadow slider. And I'm going to go to around about 30 there with my shadow recovery. I'm going to add a touch of vibrance just to bring out those autumn colours. Obviously not much because we want it to look genuine and real. Overcooking the colours will quickly look pretty gruesome. So I've dialed in about plus 15 or 16 vibrance there. Now I'm quite happy with the bottom part of that picture, and I'm going to move on to addressing the top bit, the middle distance. So let's now use the grad tool, a very, very flexible tool in Lightroom. Click on that. If I hold down the Shift key while I'm applying the grad, it will keep the grad absolutely level. But in this particular case, because of the line of the trees, slightly oblique here, I don't want to. So I'm just going to move the grad here so it's on slightly an angle that replicates the angle of the trees there. And I'm now going to just dial in a bit of negative exposure, darken down that part of the image there. How much? Ooh, good question. Quite a bit, to about there, I think, which is minus 80, minus 70, I think. It looks good to me. And now I'm going to use this dehaze slider. And as you can see, as I dial that in, it's dehazing that part of the picture. Just going to fine-tune that grad there so that the area it's affecting looks like a nice soft grad that we're not seeing the join, as it were. Okay, come back to the dehaze slider. I think that's maybe a little bit too much. I'm going to come back a touch on that to around about 28. Okay, that's good. And now I'm going to go up here and dial in a bit of contrast on that scene there. And the image is coming to me. I think it's a little bit dense. I'll come back a bit on that exposure to about 60. And that's done quite a job, really. I'm quite pleased with that. So I'm going to click on Done for that. And now I'm just going to use a second grad here. So I'll click on the grad tool again. This time I am going to hold down the Shift key to keep the grad absolutely level and pull it down so it's just affecting the sky where those clouds come in there. And I'm just going to darken that down a touch. Add a little bit of contrast there. Et voila. Finally, I step back and look at the image and ask myself if there's anything I really need to do to that. I don't think so, really. I haven't yet sharpened the picture, so I'm going to come down here and click on Sharpen Scenic, the Lightroom default, and come down here and just adjust now my masking by again holding down the Alt slider and moving the masking slider to the right so that a mask is being applied to the areas that I don't want to sharpen, the areas with no discernible detail. And there you go. And at this stage, I think I'm pretty much done with that picture. Okay, that's an interesting use of the grad tool and the dehazer slider together. The dehazer in the grad tool being used to selectively control the haze in the distance. And I think it's worked quite well. Let's just finish up by going back to where we started. Click on this bottom left display here, and it'll show the start and the finish point. Quite a radical difference. So there you go. What we do when I expose a picture like this on the left is always thinking of exposing to the right, so I'm keeping detail here in this area which looks totally washed out and burnt out, and yet turns out had all of this lovely detail there. Okay, in part 2 we'll work our way through another autumn Exmoor gold picture. See you then.